But let's get right to it. Senator Bernie Sanders, Brunch with Bernie. Senator Sanders, and let me mention your website, sanders.senate.gov, a great news source. It's competing with some of the major news sources out there, at least for my eyeballs, and as well as your newsletter and Facebook and stuff. I just wanted to plug that. I know you tend to be a little more subdued about those things, but it really is an important work that you guys are doing.
Good to be with you, Tom, and we spend a lot of time and energy on it. We think it's important that the American people get a glimpse of what's going on in Washington from a progressive perspective. So that's sanders.senate.gov, and we'd love to have as many visitors as possible.
Yeah, there's nothing out there like it. So, Bernie, the budget, I've seen some interesting editorials about how, in fact, I guess 30 Republicans yesterday wrote a letter to somebody. I don't remember if it was one of the newspapers or one of the politicians saying that it's time to stop all this discussion about the Democrats picking on them and to stop talking about the budget. Well, they're kind of freaked out about the blowback they're getting.
Here's what you got, Tom, and what I hope people understand is when you talk about the budget, you're talking about every single aspect of American life, and that's why it's such an important issue. You're talking about health care, you're talking about education, you're talking about environmental protection, talking about Medicare, you're talking about senior citizens and Social Security and people with disabilities. You're talking about workers' rights. You're talking about it all because the budget is what the priorities are of the American people, and it touches every aspect of our lives. Now, here's what you got going. I think, and I have to be honest with you to tell you, I'm worried a lot. First of all, we have to ask ourselves, how do we get to where we are today, which is a $1.6 trillion deficit this year and a $14+ trillion national debt?
Isn't the easy answer 30 years of Reaganomics?
Yes and no, because if you get into the details, it is 2 wars that were unpaid for. It is $700 billion worth of tax breaks for the very rich over the last 10 years. It is a Wall Street bailout. It is a decline in revenue because of the severe recession caused by the greed and illegal behavior of Wall Street.
Right.
So the other day, an old pal of mine named Jeff Sessions, a senator from Alabama, got onto the floor and he said, well, people like Bernie Sanders, they're big government, they're big spenders. That's the problem. They are the big spenders. Well, I got onto the floor and I said, well, actually, people like Senator Sessions are the ones who voted for 2 wars without paying for it, voted for tax breaks for billionaires without paying for it, voted for, the Wall Street bailout without paying for it, voted for the Medicare Part D prescription drug program written by the drug companies, not paid for. So those are the big spenders.
Yeah.
These are the guys who put us where we are today. When Clinton was president and left office, there was a $200 billion surplus.
Right. And
so we cannot accept for a moment the Republican position that, we're spending too much on our kids, we're spending too much on education, that's not the reality. They helped, through these trickle-down economic theories, help cause the recession. Now, the second answer is, what do they propose to do about it? Well, I want everybody to understand what this Ryan budget is that they passed in the House. It really is less of a deficit reduction effort, which it is, than an ideological attack against everything the vast majority of the American people stand for. Every significant advance made by working people since the Great Depression in terms of health care, in terms of education, in terms of Social Security, Medicare, that is what is under attack. What these people, I'll tell you a funny story. I had a hearing. I'm the chairman of the Primary Health Care and Aging Subcommittee on the Health, Education, Labor Full Committee, chaired by Senator Harkin. And I had a hearing on Wednesday, and Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky is the ranking member. And we got into an interesting debate about whether health care is a right or not. And one of the witnesses brought there by Senator Rand, basically said, well, in so many words, if you don't have any health insurance, there are always doctors out there who will treat you for free. Okay. And their theory is, in general, that's what it is that we do away with Social Security, you do away with Medicare, you do away with Medicaid, you do away with the guarantees that we have fought for so many years for working people. Food stamps, massive cuts is what they're proposing. And that ultimately we end up in a society where a handful of people have tremendous wealth and power, a middle class continues to decline and poverty increases. And for the people down below to survive, it's basically handouts. Gee, I don't have any health insurance. I don't have any Medicaid. How do I get health care? Well, maybe some doctor will treat you, or maybe not. Likely not. There could be so many people out there. But I don't think that is the kind of society we want to evolve toward. Today, you have 400 of the wealthiest people in this country own more wealth than the bottom 150 million Americans. And that gap between the very, very wealthy and everybody else is growing wider. So this budget that they passed in the House will decimate Medicaid. Millions more people will not have any health insurance. Massive cuts in education. Massive cuts in food stamps, in Head Start, you name it. And at the same time, they want to give another $1 trillion in tax breaks to the very richest people in this country at a time when the gap between the very rich and everybody else is growing wider. I mean, if you were to make this up, people wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So here you have a recession, middle class declining, cut massively in programs for the middle class, rich getting richer, and you give them huge tax breaks. So that's what the Republicans are doing. Now, what about the Democrats? You know, and some of us met with the president just a couple of days ago. Problem is, obviously, the president is not going to go anywhere near where the Republicans are, but we have this debt ceiling coming. And what the Republicans have said is they are not going to vote to raise the debt ceiling unless the president and the Democrats agree to massive, massive cuts. And I fear very much, as we have seen in the last year or so, that the Democrats are not going to be strong enough. Now, to my mind, and I'm a member of the Budget Committee in the Senate, and I've been working with the Senate chairman there trying to come up with a halfway decent budget. What you want to focus on when you talk about a deficit reduction is, number one, recognize that the tax rate today for the wealthiest people in this country is lower than it has ever been on record, 16.6%. So you're going to have to end the tax breaks for the very rich, and you're going to have to ask them to stop paying their fair share of taxes. Second of all, and we had this hearing yesterday on the oil companies and their tax breaks, you have corporation after corporation, GE, ExxonMobil, who over a period of years end up making huge profits, in some cases pay nothing in federal income taxes. In some cases, they actually get rebates. You have a situation where wealthy people and large corporations stash huge sums of money in the Cayman Islands and Bermuda, offshore, in order to avoid U.S. taxes. So, you know, you have tax provisions out there that actually encourage companies to shut down in America and move to China. So the bottom line is there are ways to move toward a balanced budget without decimating the middle class and working families. But it is going to require shared sacrifice from corporate America and the wealthy.
Amen. It's our national town hall meeting with Senator Bernie Sanders, the independent from Vermont. I think of him as America's senator, taking your calls next.